you for strength you place in the fire. We ask you for patience. You pound the sin forward. You baptize with your spirit. Our tension strength grows high. We come forth with fruit from the forge.
Well, good morning and welcome to The Forge. Good to have you watching us. Glad you've joined us on this Easter weekend. It is Easter, and we thought we would talk about the resurrection today. Yep. With me again is Scott. So, yep. Scott, thank you for joining me. Appreciate that. Not sure where the third unknown, we're not going to mention his name, guy is, but anyway.
So we haven't got a regular Trinity here today.
Right. How can we talk about the resurrection without the Trinity? I don't know. Anyway, it is a topic we want to discuss about the importance of the resurrection, the meaning of the resurrection, our responses to the resurrection of Jesus. So, Scott, we've talked a little bit about this before, so why don't you start us off and take us in the direction of the resurrection?
Oh, well, I mean, for me, it's one of the critical things about our faith is that Jesus has risen from the dead. Mm-hmm. And Paul in 1 Corinthians 15 talks about if Christ isn't risen from the dead, then of all people, we're the most to be pitied. Yeah. It's like that we would have a false hope. And I look at that, it's like, okay, how can we have this hope? Especially online nowadays, especially during this week of the year. Mm-hmm. So there's all the stuff on social media. You get all the snarky comments about zombie Jesus and all this. Right. And it's like, they try to make it sound like belief in the resurrection is some harebrained notion, mm-hmm. Rather than historical fact. And, so that's, I look at that and I said, this is a reasonable faith. This is not some harebrained kind of thing that's going on. Yeah. It's not like something, we got this Jesus guy who is really a good teacher. Let's see if we can spice up the story a bit. Right. It's, hold it, this is what he kept saying was going to happen, and then it happened. Yeah. And, that for me, it's kind of that cement, of the faith. I mean, we realize that Jesus was God. And the fact that he is, the firstborn, that we get to participate in that also, it's just, that's mind-boggling. Yes.
It's interesting. When you look at the preaching in Acts of Peter and Paul and John and all those who preached in the book of Acts, one thing that they always emphasized was the resurrection of Jesus. Yeah. Jesus rose again on the third day. He rose again, and they come to the high point of their sermon is Jesus rose again on the third day. Yeah.
And he goes about how you guys did all this and you killed him, but he rose again. Yes. And I was looking at Paul when he was making his defense. Mm-hmm. He comes and being the sharp guy that he is, especially the first ones there, got all the religious leaders, got the Sadducees and the Pharisees, and he knows the Pharisees believe in the resurrection and the Sadducees don't, and they're all judging him, and he says, hey, I'm on trial for talking, for preaching the hope of the resurrection, which automatically divides this bunch. Right. The Pharisees go, hey, nothing wrong with him. The Sadducees go, hey, and then, then it's off to Felix, and Felix, they say, hey, here's some religious thing. They just got to talk about, some point of religion. And then there he goes to Festus and says, hey, this guy keeps talking about this Jesus who says he isn't dead anymore. Right. Then, appeal to Caesar, and then, Agrippa comes into town. Right. And he's talking to Agrippa, and he says, hey, I've got this education. I'm a Pharisee, son of Pharisees, trained in all this. Yeah. And this Jesus was dead. I was trying to stomp it out. Mm-hmm. And then he tells his story about how he encountered this guy who's supposed to be dead.
Right.
You know, he's on his way to Damascus to, strike down some more blows for justice and righteousness and holiness. And the very, and then Jesus appears and, hey, and his life is all turned around. And, and he explains to Agrippa, hey, this is what happened to me. And this hasn't been hidden in a corner. This is all out in the public, But that's Paul's continuous thing all the way up the chain.
Right.
Is that Jesus rose from the dead, and
what interests me about Paul's life, now that you mention him, is, when Jesus rose from the dead, of course, the Pharisees found that out. The soldiers were like, I don't know where he went to. And the Pharisees say, okay, don't say anything.
Yeah.
No. Well, here's what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Say that the disciples stole them. Don't worry, we'll pay everybody off. You'll keep your jobs. You're good. So you got to know that Paul was part of that group.
Yeah. He must have known.
Yeah.
He was in the Pharisees and all that.
Yeah. So Paul is confronted with this. We got to pay these guys off so the story of his resurrection doesn't get out, because then they'll really believe in him, and we don't want that.
Yeah.
But what do you got to do in your mind to know there's a fact that happened, but I'm not going to, and then to persecute the church and pretend that Jesus didn't rise from the dead, and then you meet him.
Yeah.
And he's like, who are you, Lord? I'm Jesus, whom you're persecuting. You are risen from the dead. It is true. I tried to hide it, but I can't.
But even if he wasn't in with that immediate group, he would have known that, hey, we got to get rid of this Jesus guy.
Yeah.
That would have been, I would think that'd be pretty common knowledge around the area. We got to get rid of this guy. He's causing trouble for all of us. And, that, okay, he's dead. And, there's some sort of hubbub, but these followers, they just keep going on.
Yeah. They act like he's alive.
Yeah, it's like, hold it, this can't be right. This is against what God is saying,
Yeah. And I wonder if, to continue down the line a little bit with that, in the book of Acts, I wonder, if Paul was part of the group that brought the disciples in. Hey, they're preaching in the temple. We got to stop these guys, bring them in, arrest them, put them in prison, and they're out there preaching again because they miraculously escape, and then they bring them in. What are you guys doing? Well, we're preaching Jesus. You killed him, but God raised him from the dead. I wonder if Paul was part of that group.
Oh, yeah, it'd be, we'll have to ask.
Yeah, that's right. And at least we know he was part of, he was there in charge of the stoning of Stephen, and Stephen looks up to heaven, and I see Jesus standing at the right hand of the throne of God. I mean, wow.
It's like, okay, this is, all these little instincts have got to have some effect. And then when he finally encounters Jesus, it's like, oh, man. And you figure just the theological adjusting at that time.
Oh, man, adjusting, probably the wrong word. That blew his theology out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, all the things you thought.
Yeah.
But, that's, I think, what's so neat, I said, we were talking before about how we've got this bunch of pretty much ordinary people. That, that Jesus says, okay, we got a bunch of ordinary guys. They're not all highly skilled and highly schooled or anything like that. Just a bunch of ordinary people. And I'm going to trust these guys to spread the word about my kingdom. It was okay. And, but you mentioned these were, these guys, they may not have been formally educated, but they were common sense people. They were not stupid. They were workers. They knew their jobs. They knew not to just believe anything. They would know that if they saw the National Enquirer at the store, that Bat Boy was not real.
What? You just changed my world.
So it was, these guys, and then all the appearances after that, and I, looking at just the resurrection when Jesus appeared, to the women. It's like, you look, if this was fan fiction written at the time, they would not be having women be the first people there hearing this.
Tell us why.
Well, the women were not looked up at as equals. They were,
Yeah.
basically property,
And they didn't have when it came to witnesses,
Yeah.
women could not be witnesses in a trial.
Yeah.
Because they just weren't trusted or counted as anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right.
And you see these things where Jesus says, I'm going to mess with you guys a bit. I'm going to appear to women first.
Yes.
And then, of course, the women come back and say, hey, he's gone. He's risen from the dead.
Yeah.
They're going, what?
Yeah.
So Peter and John know, we can't believe these women, so they run to the tomb.
Yes.
Whoa, they were telling the truth,
Yeah.
And, and then Jesus appears, not just to them, because it was like, they said they saw him.
Yeah.
But he keeps appearing to different people
Yes,
in different
yes.
places and crowds of people.
Right.
It's like, how many more times, you think, how many more times would he have needed to appear to establish that he was risen from the dead?
Yes.
But he did enough
Yes.
to different groups of people, different places, and even Thomas, said, hey, if I don't see those wounds, I'm not going to believe you. And hey, here, look, believe.
Yeah. Put your fingers in my hand. Yeah.
And Jesus does everything to show that he has risen from the dead.
Yes.
And you look at the lives of the disciples too.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
How they were transformed. Because you look at, here they are, like Good Friday. Jesus has been hauled off by these soldiers. The big guys with the swords and everything. And they all kind of run and hide.
Yeah. Not a one of them stayed.
And they're all off hiding. And Peter kind of trying to keep an eye on what's going on, and ends up denying Christ. And and then they're all just kind of hiding out.
Yeah.
And finally, all the holiday is over and they can go to the tomb again.
Right.
And they're still hiding out, because they don't know what's going on. And then you take this bunch of kind of scared guys, and even like Peter and them, when they go back and they're fishing, and Jesus appears to them and says, here, have some fish,
Yeah.
And it's like they had kind of given up on the whole thing, and then they encounter the risen Christ. And all of a sudden, bam, Peter's up there preaching thousands of people.
Yes, and healing people. They're radically changed. And some of the people Jesus appeared to was his own brothers.
Yeah.
And his own brothers did not believe in him before.
Yeah.
They even kind of mocked him a little bit.
Yeah.
And then after, James becomes the leader of the church in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And his brother Jude is the one who writes the book of Jude.
Yeah.
So, their lives are radically transformed.
Yeah,
because,
and that's...
Yeah.
And I mean, if nothing else, that's our hope.
Yeah.
I look, for me, I think one of the biggest pluses of being a Christian is that transforming power of Christ. That when you have that encounter with Christ, that your life is changed.
Yes.
And it's that, the power of sin is broken. We look at things like, I just couldn't help myself. I wanted to stop doing this, but I couldn't help myself. Yeah. God comes in the picture and says, no, you don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Sin no longer has that thing, that hold on you anymore.
Yeah. It's not our master
you are
anymore.
free to do the good things.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what I think is just an amazing thing about Jesus, and that's that encounter with the risen Christ. That he is not just some figurehead who said a bunch of nice things a couple thousand years ago.
Right.
That we're going to look at these sayings and but he is still alive, and he is still working in our lives today.
Yeah. You mentioned at the very beginning, you talked about 1 Corinthians 15 when Paul says, if the resurrection of Jesus was not true, then our faith is dead. It means nothing. We are to be most pitied of men, and there is no salvation.
Yeah.
Talk to that a little bit. I mean, that's why it's the high point of all the preaching of the apostles is the resurrection, because it means so much. It's so significant. Without the resurrection, there is no salvation.
That's
so talk.
Let's talk
about
that
a little
sacrifice.
bit.
I was thinking, it's like we're always, I guess, looking at ourselves saying, oh, I wish I was better. I wish I was more perfect, and you look in the entire history of all mankind, there's only been one job that required a perfect person. And Jesus was the perfect person, and he said, I will do that job.
Right.
I will take the sin of the world on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And, and I mean, that for me, it's like, I guess, oh man, it's just, you start thinking about that, that we strive to be perfect, but there's no way we could ever come close.
Yeah.
But and then even the fact that Jesus offered himself as a sacrifice, it's like, oh, that's nice.
Right.
He died for me,
Right.
Oh, that's nice,
Yeah.
But then he rose again, and it's like, then that's demonstrating his power over death.
Right.
And it's that, okay, death can't hold him, and death is not to be feared, because death is not the end.
Right.
We look at things, I've seen so many friends like, oh, they died, that's, the end, and it's like, no, I think there's more to it than that.
Yes.
And, kind of that view that, not that we are people that have a spirit, but we are spirits that have a body.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
That we are spiritual beings,
Yes.
and I look at the spiritual realm as, sure, we can't pick it up on a Geiger counter or X-ray detector or anything like that. About the only thing that can actually detect it is this flesh and stuff.
Yeah.
It takes a spiritual being to detect that spiritual world.
That's a good point.
And and that's the fact that we have that resurrection, that we know that Jesus died and says, I died for you so that, I paid the price so you don't have to be, the death doesn't have a grip on you either.
Right.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
I mean, if he didn't rise from the dead, it's like, what have we got to hope for?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, okay, I can die and it's okay, the balance sheet's okay, but hey,
Yeah.
But, the fact that he is alive and says, hey, I've got a place for you.
Right.
We're going to be together forever.
Right. Yeah. The resurrection, because Jesus is alive, when he says, I'm coming back and I'm preparing a place for you, we can know the truth of that he is now preparing a place for us.
Yeah.
Which is really pretty cool. Like,
It is. Well, and, even the fact that he said, hey, they're going to kill me, but I'm going to rise from the dead. He said beforehand, multiple times that this is what's going to happen, guys.
Yeah.
And wow, it happened just like he said it was going to.
Right.
What about the other stuff he said?
Yeah. Exactly.
And that we know that, hey, this is not the end. This is not all there is.
Yes.
And that's an incredible hope.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, this world, it's God's creation, but, it's tainted, it's broken.
Right. Yeah.
And in so many ways, it sucks.
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah.
We get aches, we get pains, our bodies wear out, they fall apart. You get all the disease and everything. It's like, okay, God says, we get to leave that behind.
Yeah. Yeah, that is such a good thing to know, that because Jesus was raised again, so too are we going to be raised again.
Yeah.
And our bodies will function the way they should.
Yeah.
Never wear out. I mean,
yeah.
that's the hope of the resurrection, to coming from a different angle, but
oh yeah.
I mean, that's,
well, even his body is brutally beaten up, tortured, and you look at this body that cannot sustain life at all.
Right.
That he was, hey, Okay, I saved a couple marks for you guys.
Isn't it interesting? Yeah, I've wondered about that. Isn't it
like,
interesting that what happened to the whip scars on his back, right? What happened to all the bruises on his face and everything?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just amazing.
You know, maybe he keeps those. Just I don't know.
Yeah.
But
to point, here's the nail prints, and here's the put your hand in my side.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think because the act of being on the cross is, Colossians tells us that when he was on the cross, he disarmed the powers and principalities of this world.
Yeah.
It was that act of hanging on the cross where he disarmed them.
Yeah.
So that's probably the significance of keeping those scars, right? It's by these scars you're healed, sort of thing.
Yeah, these are the marks that show I've won.
Yes, exactly.
As they said, like disarming, it's like, he's there on the cross, and like death is throwing everything at him.
Yeah.
It can.
Yeah. And trying to claim him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of these things where it's just,
Yeah. It's so much bigger than we can imagine and put to words. But the end of 1 Corinthians 15, 15 is that whole resurrection chapter, as you know, and as it gets near the end, Paul's explaining about, because Jesus was raised from the dead, and he was given a new body, a spiritual body, or a body fit for heaven. We'll have a new body. We don't have the same flesh and blood. We have bodies
that's fit for heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, he says, and where, O death, is your sting?
Yeah.
The power of, where else the power of death is sin, and Jesus has paid that. He's overcome death.
Yeah.
And he has the victory over that, and therefore, rejoice and stand firm and keep promoting Christ because we have the victory.
It knows that death is not the end.
Yeah.
It's more a beginning, if anything, because it's the beginning to a lot longer stretch of time than we've got here.
Yeah. I like it when he ends just saying, your labor's not in vain.
Yeah.
No, this is not vanity. This is not made up. This is not useless. Christ has died, was raised again. Yeah. So, do the work that you need to do for God, and it's not in vain.
And I was saying one thing too about the fact that he rose was that he was dead. It wasn't one of these.
Yes.
I just passed out.
Right.
It was hot and sunny, and he kind of passed out. You got the whipping. He's lost a fair amount of blood from that. And then, if nothing else, the spear in the side.
Right.
It wasn't just kind of a little poke. This is running all the way in.
Yeah.
And
it would have pierced his lung and.
Enough where blood is gushing out. It's like, and these guys, they weren't amateurs. That was their job. They were on crucifixion detail. That was their job to make sure the guys were dead.
Right. Which is why they broke their legs.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is hanging on, and let's break his leg, get it over with. I got to go home.
Yes, I don't know if 3 crucifixions in one day was a busy day or a slow day or what.
Right. Yeah.
But these guys, that was their job, and they knew what they were doing, and they knew how to tell if the guy was dead.
Right. They understood.
If he wasn't dead, he would have been dead after the spear.
Right. And when they took him down off the cross, if he wasn't dead, they wouldn't have said, "Oh yeah, don't worry about it."
Yeah.
I mean, he's dead. They would verify before giving the body away, this man is dead.
He's dead. Yeah, it's not going to be revived in the cool of the tomb.
Right, exactly. I will stake my life on it. Because the soldiers, if he wasn't dead, then the soldier would get the same punishment.
Yeah.
Because he didn't carry it out. So no soldier's going to go, close enough.
Yeah. So
no way.
But the fact that he was really dead.
Yes.
Yes. And that was, then he really showed up alive to all these people. It's one of those things where people think, oh, how could you believe that? Oh, it's a bunch of people. He convinced a lot of people at that time that he was alive.
Yes.
And I said, not just the fishermen, but you get somebody highly educated and trained like Paul.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
who definitely did not expect to see him alive again.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm going to ask a question out of the blue. We haven't prepped you for this or anything, so you can take a pass on it if you want. But I've been thinking about, just before that, before the crucifixion, death, and resurrection of Jesus. He says in John 11, Lazarus dies, and Mary and Martha come and say, Jesus, if you were here, he never would have died. And Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. Yeah. Right? All who come to me will never die. Do you believe this? Yeah, we do. And then, I don't know, then Lazarus is dead. He's in the tomb.
Yeah.
For what, 4 days, I think it was.
Yeah, he's going to be stinking if we open that tomb.
And Jesus raises him from the dead. And this is months before, just months before, his own resurrection. So I don't know if I can make a connection there, if that was Jesus saying, hey, look, God raises from the dead. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's one of those things where maybe he's, showing, hey, that even ahead of time, that we've got this power over death.
Yes.
And even I was thinking about Paul's speech with Agrippa. He says, why do people consider it strange that God raises people from the dead?
Right. Yes.
Yes. That is, part of what they were.
That's what God does. God gives life.
Yeah, God gives life.
Yeah.
And, maybe, it's a thing where, you start looking at the situation with Lazarus, okay, here's Jesus saying, okay, we've got this power. And then you kind of look at the bit on the cross where, the Father turns away and he says, hey. And at that point, if you're, okay, Jesus has got to be having the faith that the Father is going to raise him up at that point.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. Yeah. You don't go on a cross to know you're going to die and not quite sure if the Father's going to come through.
Yeah. It's like...
No, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, kind of the Abraham-Isaac thing with Isaac, wonder, okay, what's Dad doing here?
Right.
And Dad's got a knife.
Why am I tied up all of a sudden? What's with this? Why am I on this altar?
Yeah. And, Dad doesn't seem to be too shaken up about this,
Right.
But, Jesus, I think, had the confidence, that the Father, that he, he'd been telling everybody, I'm going to be raised from the dead.
Right.
Apparently they had talked about this before he came to Earth.
Right.
But,
It's interesting. The resurrection from the dead is also interesting to me, and I'm going to take another different direction on it.
Okay. How disappointed was Lazarus that he had to come back?
Well, maybe so. I got to go through this again?
Wow.
But where was I going now? Oh, Mr.
Successfully
Scott.
derailed.
Yes, you did it. I have no idea.
Oh.
I really forgot now. That's kind of crazy. But the resurrection from the dead, I do know. Only God can raise people from the dead.
Yeah.
Only God can give life from something which is lifeless.
Yeah.
That's a miracle. That's a sign and wonder that Satan can never counterfeit.
Yeah.
And that's just interesting to me, also that Jesus was raised from the dead. That can never be counterfeited.
Yeah.
Satan can try all that he wants, but he can never raise anyone from the dead.
Yeah.
Only the power of God.
Yeah. I mean, if he does, we know it's going to be fake.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't really dead.
Yeah.
Because Satan has no power over death or life.
Yeah.
So only God brings life and gives life. So that's just another interesting thing. And
God is the life giver. You know?
And
he renews our life. That makes the whole bit of. He makes all things new.
Yeah.
And that's that gives us a new life. It's.
Yes.
And I said, kind of going back to that transforming power of Jesus, that, people can look around and say, gosh, my life really sucks. Well, let Jesus take that and transform it.
Yeah.
And God, and there's a line in one of the songs on the radio, he turns ashes into art.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, we can take the gunk of our life and God can say, I can do something with that.
Yeah.
I can make that into something really good.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of our hope, is
Yes.
that, okay, God, I've screwed this up pretty good on my own.
Yeah.
I'm going to come to you and say, here it is.
Yeah. And that encourages me to know that God gives me new life.
Yeah.
That we're no longer, the old is gone, the new has come.
Yeah.
I don't live out of my sinful nature. I can live out of the nature that God gives me from His Holy Spirit. And so the transformation. And that can only happen because Christ is alive.
Amen. Yeah.
Which that's what Paul experienced on the road to Damascus. That's what all the disciples experienced. That's what his brothers experienced. That's what, as you read through the early church in Acts, their just lives are being completely transformed.
Yeah, it's people are not just I think that's one of the changes. Looking at churches in our country now, coming up to, we look at how many churches, or how many people that profess Christianity are actually allowing God to transform their lives, or whether I call it whether it's like a fashion accessory, Jesus is just a fashion accessory for their life that they'll put on Sunday mornings or whatever, and and they don't realize there is so much more that there can be.
Yes.
And that's sad that people think, this little bit of Christ that I go through, whatever is enough, or that's all there is to it, and they don't realize, wow, this is there's so much more to it. We've got an infinite God.
Yes. It's like when people go to Hawaii or something and they come back with a gift for you and it's just a little bottle of sand.
Yeah.
Right? And so our Christian life is sometimes that way. I mean, we've got this infinite, powerful God who brings life from nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with my little bottle of God.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's the thing, it's getting that, I guess, a holy hunger for more.
Yes. Yes. Learning to, like the Psalm says, as the deer pants for the water, so my soul pants for you.
To have that and just, I was talking to Denise, I said, I've got this imagination that specializes in worst case scenarios. I said, but I serve a God who specializes in best case scenarios.
Oh, that's a wonderful statement.
That, I will look at a situation, how could this, I know how this could be worse.
Right.
God says, no, let's see, I can come up with the best possible outcome of this, and just trusting God and just leaning in, okay, God, let's see what you can do, and just being amazed at everything that He does. So
that's I can't imagine we should go on in this conversation. What you just said there was, to me, pretty amazing. I just love that. I have this mind that specializes in worst case scenarios, but I have this God who specializes in best case scenarios. That describes what was happening, the death of Jesus and then the resurrection.
Yeah.
I mean, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Friday but Sunday's coming thing, we're focused on Friday, but God's saying, hey, hang on. Let me show you something.
Yeah. And He wants to do that in all of our situations, in all of our struggles and everything we go through.
That's what's so amazing.
Yeah. And that can only happen because Jesus is alive.
Yeah, if He wasn't alive,
and that's why we would be most pitied, because if Jesus wasn't alive and we go around saying, oh yeah, Jesus is going to save me, Jesus, and He's actually not alive, then of course it's like...
Then it's just our positive thoughts trying to keep us going.
Right. Yeah. It's like, somebody passes away, a father, a mother, whatever passes away, and 8 years later, oh no, he just went on a long trip, he'll be back. That's a sad case scenario, but Jesus is alive.
Yeah, He's alive, and He's here, He is with us, and He's not far off. He's not way out where we got to wait for Him to show up.
He's Emmanuel.
Right here with us, right here inside us.
Exactly.
And that's just amazing. It's one of these things where brain keeps. I got to get the little reset button to.
Yeah, yeah.
Little breaker keeps popping there.
That's what leads us into transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The life of Christ is in me,
Yeah.
in us. Yeah, amazing.
That He's alive. We can be alive. We're not trapped with this world.
Yes, yes.
We have
Another
got
great
life.
statement. Another great statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scott, thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, I always appreciate you and the way
been
you
fun.
approach
It's been
things
fun.
and think about things. Yeah, yeah. I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, we get fun talking about Jesus and the stuff He does in our lives and just the hope that we have. So
Exactly, exactly. Well, folks, thank you for watching. I'm glad that you were watching. Hope this was encouraging to you, uplifting, and hopeful to you. So again, thank you, Scott, for leading us that way. And well, enjoy the day, enjoy your Easter weekend, and may you know the presence and life of Christ, especially this day.
We ask you for strength, you put us in the fire. We ask you for patience, you pound the sin forward, you baptize with your spirit. Our tension strength grows high, we come forth with fruit from the floor.